9 experienced mountaineers cut their tent open from the inside, ran barefoot into -40-degree darkness, and every single one of them died, and the Soviet investigators who found them wrote just 3 words in the official cause of death file: an unknown compelling force. By the end of this video you will understand exactly what physics and forensic science say happened on that slope, and why the answer is somehow more disturbing than any conspiracy. The hikers were not amateurs. Igor Dyatlov was a 23-year-old engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute who had led 8 previous expeditions through some of the most brutal terrain in the Soviet Union. But the strangest part, the thing almost nobody focuses on, is not how they died, but the exact sequence of small physical decisions they made in the final 90 minutes of their lives, each one of which only makes sense if something happened that terrified trained survivalists into irrational action. On the 1st of February 1959 the group pitched their canvas tent at roughly 1,079 meters on the eastern slope of a peak the local Monsey people called Kholat Syakhl, a name that translates, precisely, to Dead Mountain. They chose that campsite deliberately, pitching on the open slope rather than in the sheltered tree-line 1.5 kilometers below was a training decision. They wanted to practice high-altitude camping in full exposure. Investigators found the tent still standing, half buried in snow, with all 9 sleeping bags inside, all boots inside, all food inside, meaning they left in such haste they abandoned the one thing that keeps you alive in a Siberian winter. The tent fabric had been sliced open from the inside, not ripped, not torn from wind, but cut cleanly with a knife, in 2 separate vertical gashes, by someone who needed to exit faster than a zipper would allow. So what could make 9 trained, calm, rational people decide that cutting through the tent wall and running into a blizzard was safer than staying inside? The footprints in the snow told investigators something remarkable. All 9 walked, did not run, down the slope in a rough group for about 500 meters before splitting into 3 subgroups near the tree line. The fact that they walked in a group, calmly, means they were not fleeing in blind panic. They were moving with purpose, away from something specific, toward what they believed was shelter. 2 of the hikers, Yuri Krivonischenko and Yuri Doroshenko, were found at the tree line beside a large Siberian cedar. They had climbed 4 meters up into the tree, breaking branches as they went, apparently trying to see back up the slope toward the tent. Those 2 were found in their underwear, not because they undressed in a panic, but because investigators later confirmed their outer clothes had been deliberately removed and carried further down the slope and given to other members of the group. That single act, stripping 2 dead or dying members to clothe the living, tells you they were making rational triage decisions even as they were dying, which rules out mass hysteria, alcohol, or hypothermic confusion at that stage. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. The 4 hikers found deepest in the ravine, Lyudmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, Alexander Kolevatov, and Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, had injuries that a Soviet forensic medical examiner said were comparable to a severe car crash. Dubinina and Zolotaryov each had multiple fractured ribs, the kind of fracture pattern that requires enormous bilateral compression force, the same pattern you see in people caught in industrial press accidents or vehicle rollovers. And yet, and this is the detail that baffled investigators for decades, there were no external bruises, no skin lacerations, no signs of external trauma whatsoever on the bodies. In medicine this specific pattern, catastrophic internal injury with 0 external marks, has a name. It is called a barotrauma signature, and it happens when a massive pressure wave passes through soft tissue fast enough that the skin never absorbs the shock. The most likely natural source of that kind of focused pressure wave on a mountain slope at night is a slab avalanche, specifically the air blast that precedes the snow front by a fraction of a second and can hurl a person meters through the air without leaving a mark. In 2021 a peer-reviewed study in the journal Nature Communications used computational snowpack modeling at Kholat Syakhl's exact geometry and concluded that a small delayed slab avalanche, triggered by wind redistribution of snow several hours after the hikers pitched their tent, was physically plausible at that site. But that explanation alone does not close every gap, because Dubinina's tongue, soft palate, and parts of her upper esophagus were missing entirely, with no corresponding blood pooling in the body cavity to suggest they were torn out. The original Soviet medical examiner attributed the missing tissue to post-mortem decomposition, and here the science actually supports that conclusion. the 4 ravine victims lay under several meters of snow for more than 2 months before discovery, submerged in meltwater. Animal scavenging, specifically insects, rodents, and birds working upward from the mouth, the softest entry point, is the documented mechanism for exactly this tissue loss pattern in bodies recovered from alpine snowmelt environments. Then there is the radiation. 4 of the hikers' clothing items tested positive for beta radiation at levels the investigators noted were above normal, a detail that became rocket fuel for every conspiracy theory involving Soviet weapons testing. But here is what the radiation numbers actually mean in context. The readings were on the order of 9,900 disintegrations per minute per 150 square centimeters of fabric, which sounds alarming until you know that luminescent watch dials of that era, standard Soviet military issue, produced comparable background contamination on clothing worn near them. Multiple members of the group were known to own or handle such watches, and the contamination was found on outer layers, exactly where transfer from a watch worn on the wrist would deposit particles during normal activity. What about the famous orange tan on the hiker's skin that early Soviet reports mention? Could that be radiation burn? No, the discoloration was post-mortem decomposition combined with prolonged UV exposure from sunlight reflecting off snow, a phenomenon called tanning in cold climate forensics, well documented in alpine fatalities where bodies are exposed for weeks. So where does all the evidence actually converge? A slab avalanche, or more precisely, a wind slab event, where a thin but dense crust of wind-packed snow releases, strikes the tent between midnight and 2 a.m., partially collapsing it onto sleeping hikers and delivering the blunt compression injuries. The hikers inside the tent, some already injured, cut their way out because the weight of the snow made the entrance unusable. They then moved together downslope toward the tree-line, the only landmark they could navigate toward in a whiteout with no boots and no time to retrieve gear. Those with the worst injuries, Dubinina, Zolotaryov, Kolevatov, Thibault-Brignoles, made it furthest, supported by the others, but could not survive the combination of internal trauma and -40-degree exposure without shelter, and fell into the ravine. The others built a small fire near the cedar tree. The broken branches were not from climbing in panic but from actively harvesting firewood, and died of hypothermia when the fire went out, one by one, over the next few hours. There is one final detail that makes the whole story land differently once you understand it. Hypothermia, in its terminal stages, causes a reflex called paradoxical undressing. The brain's thermoregulatory circuits misfire, blood vessels in the skin suddenly dilate, and the dying person feels an overwhelming, genuine sensation of burning heat. This is documented in roughly 20% of hypothermia deaths recovered in controlled forensic studies. The affected person tears off their own clothes in the final minutes, which is why 2 of the hikers were found nearly undressed in the snow with no other explanation. 9 people who had crossed 60 mountains together, who knew exactly what they were doing, died not because of a weapon or a monster or a government secret but because a thin plate of wind-packed snow the size of a tennis court shifted 4 centimeters in the middle of the night. What haunts us about Dyatlov Pass is not really the mystery, it is the recognition that 9 careful, capable, prepared people did everything right, and the mountain simply did not care. The people beside you right now, the ones you eat dinner with, the ones whose voices you know so well you can hear them in memory even when the room is silent, are exactly as competent and as vulnerable as Igor Dyatlov's team. The real lesson of Kolet's cycle is not avoid mountains. It is that the margin between a normal night and the last night of your life is measured not in skill but in centimeters of snow and seconds of decision-making. Dead Mountain is still there, unchanged, and on some winter nights, when the wind loads a new plate of snow onto that eastern slope, the mountain holds a kind of memory that no government file can declassify and no equation can fully dissolve. Follow Science Explained daily for more.